I'm Karen Roberts, live in Nairobi. Ucha Okoronkwe joins me now with all your business headlines.
Thank you, Karen. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Progress made as China and the US begin a new round of talks. And a look at South Africa's Democratic Alliance proposals to keep the country's lights on. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it's back to you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Ucha. We begin in Mogadishu. At least 18 people have been killed and several others injured after a car bomb exploded on a busy street in Somalia's capital. The explosion took place in an area with many businesses and travellers. No one has immediately claimed responsibility for the bombing. However, Mogadishu is regularly targeted by Al-Qaeda affiliate Al-Shabaab. They've been fighting for over a decade to topple the government. Residents in Mogadishu have expressed shock at the aftermath of the bombing.
When the explosion happened, I was at Bulletin Hotel. I was in room 9. My attention was caught by a falling window. God was at our mercy. Many people died here. The first thing I saw was the flesh of the people. It was the first time I saw flesh of a human being. It was a terrifying scene. What happened here was shocking, truly shocking.
Well, we are joined by Dr. Abdi Fattah Ismail Tahir. He is the Deputy Chair of Policies and Strategies for the Union of Peace and Development Party. He's also a member of the Federal Parliament of Somalia. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Tahir. The car bomb exploded, killing at least 18 people, as we've been saying, near to a hotel and restaurants in Mogadishu. Why is this area targeted by Islamist militants?
The area is primarily targeted by terrorists because of the fact that it is a business hub. In addition to that, it is also frequented by officials from the government. Is the road that leads to the presidency. So basically, it has a significant economic and security strategy. It's located basically in an important part of the city.
And Dr. Tahir, with the withdrawal of several troops from AMISOM, how is the government of Somalia going to deal with the militant threat there?
I don't think whether the government is doing or coping well with the security threats posed by terrorists like Al-Shabaab, primarily because of the fact that the government doesn't have clear-cut policies about the security problems in the country. They don't also have a strategy, a well-regulated and well-established strategy to improve the security in the city. So the government basically is not well equipped to advance the state of security in the country at large, and in particular the city, the capital city.
Why is Al-Shabaab so opposed to Somalia's government, and what can be done to remedy the situation there?
Al-Shabaab is basically opposed to the government on ideological basis. They believe that strict Sharia, Islamic Sharia should be, a particular interpretation of the Islamic Sharia should be imposed on the Somalis. And there is also, we can divide, there are maybe 3 elements to the argument in Al-Shabaab. One of them is basically interested in political accommodation, and I believe if the government comes up with a strategy to speak to this kind of people, maybe they will no longer be with Al-Shabaab. And there is another group which ideologically believes that if the strict version of Sharia is not imposed on Somalia, then they should keep on fighting with the government. And there is a third one, which is third component, which is composed of people who fear for themselves and who are aligned with Al-Shabaab and who volunteer or do whatever Al-Shabaab wants because of the coercion on the part of Al-Shabaab. So I think the only way to remedy these security problems posed by Al-Shabaab is to kind of consider these separate elements within them. So if there is a group to talk to, and I believe there are people willing to talk to the government to end the conflict, and there are people who don't want. And there should be no reason why we shouldn't be talking to Al-Shabaab if Taliban, if the government of Afghanistan, together with the Western packers, with the Americans' help, are talking to Taliban. There should be no reason why we should not be talking to Al-Shabaab, as long as there are people willing to talk to us.
Okay, thank you very much for your analysis. That was Dr. Abdi Fattah Ismail Tahir there on the latest car bombing in Mogadishu. Moving on to other news now. Mozambique aid organisations are looking to prevent the spread of waterborne diseases. The World Health Organization announced 900,000 doses of oral cholera vaccines. This comes after 5 cases of cholera were confirmed. Here's more on that story.
The World Health Organization is set to launch a cholera vaccination campaign in Mozambique. The country is reeling from the effects of Cyclone Ida, with areas of the country remaining submerged. Floodwaters increase the risk of waterborne diseases, with 5 cases of cholera already confirmed.
The actions that we are currently taking in order to address this problem. 1. There are a number of cholera treatment centres being set up around the province. 9 centres are in the process of being set up or are already operational. There is a vaccination campaign which will start next week.
900,000 doses of oral cholera vaccines are being delivered to the country. 1 dose will provide a patient with 3 months protection from the disease. Parts of Mozambique remain cut off, providing a real challenge in terms of logistics.
It takes time to organise the huge amount of logistics and people that come in on one of these operations. You're standing here in an airport that is absolutely packed with planes, equipment and people. Organising that and getting it all to the right place takes time. It's unfortunate, but that is the fact of it. It will all get there.
With thousands of displaced people moving into makeshift camps, relief efforts are focusing on stopping the spread of waterborne diseases. Astatal, CGTN.
We are now joined by CGTN's Angelo Coppola in Beira for us. That is the town most affected by Cyclone Idai. Our Johannesburg-based correspondent has been following the situation there. Angelo, what is the latest in Beira?
Well, Karen, it's hot, it's muggy, there's lots of stagnant water lying around, there's minimal sanitation, and of course electricity is a bit of a luxury. For those who haven't been to Beira or Beira, it's split into the commercial areas, the CBD, there's the shanty suburbs, and then there's the more established suburbs. But most of the damage has been done in the shanty towns. In fact, it's the commercial areas that saw mainly the roofs that were ripped off and lots of flooding damage. But the 70 permanent accommodation camps that have been created were set up in the city at the schools that had been sort of let off during the days of national mourning last week. The Minister of Education then wanted all the schools to reopen, so everybody that was in those schools was then moved out. And so now we're kind of getting back into a bit of normality here. The streets are full of huge 18-wheeler trucks that are now jockeying for position to either get to the port or try and get to the market or float their goods. So life is starting to return to normal, but there's still hundreds and thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who are not quite sure where their future lies, Karen.
It seems that there are confirmed reports now of a cholera outbreak with 5 cases so far. How is the government and international agencies dealing with this situation?
Well, Colin, the big issue here really is not the count of 5. It's the fact that they're still gathering information, and they have to send all the data they collect and all the samples they get from the different stations that they have around the Beira and in the regions to a lab in Maputo, which is a 90-minute flight from Beira. So until they've got that data back, they can't confirm whether there's been an increase or not. As far as whether the authorities and the agencies are coping, they're managing wonderfully, if that's the right choice of words. And the bottom line here is that they've done this before, they've operated in Africa before, they've dealt with cholera and other waterborne diseases, so they kind of have the tools in place to do what they need to do to make sure that it doesn't spread. There are those cholera treatment centers we were talking about earlier. The frustration, of course, is that bottom line is they can't confirm any more cases, and this is a major issue for them, until they've got the lab results back. So there is that delay in releasing any new updates to the data. Karen?
Okay, thank you very much. That was CGTN's Angelo Coppola there for us in Beira. Well, the aid agencies have swung into action in the Manaka, Sofala, Tete and Zambezia provinces, the epicenter of Cyclone Idai's destruction. Camps have been set up in fields near to the Beira airport and further upriver towards Budzi town. Angelo Coppola again has more.
With enough aid in country now, agencies have created many temporary camps which are housing thousands upon thousands of displaced Mozambicans.
Many of the families here have had homes that are completely destroyed. They've decided to stay in their homes due to many different reasons, and they're wanting to rebuild their lives. So we're giving them some of these basic items just to help them get back onto their feet. This includes things like tools for building, tarpaulin.
Camps around Beira are holding between 1,000 and 2,500 people per camp, and they need to be clothed and fed. The World Food Programme arrived in Beira 48 hours after the cyclone struck.
Now we are evolving, we are procuring large volumes of food for the medium term elsewhere in southern Africa, in South Africa, in Zambia. We're shipping that food in, we're trucking that food into Mozambique. So we are really ramping up on the food side and we're in it for the long haul.
The flood victims have been housed in all manner of temporary shelters, from churches to abandoned buildings, halls and classrooms.
These people is not this area. These people, the first time we are in schools, but now the Minister for the Education is necessary to start the school, and then it's necessary to allocation these people, keep the people in school for the companies.
Their work is only beginning. It's estimated that hundreds of millions of dollars will be needed to help rebuild this part of Mozambique.
The needs here are really immense, and we need continued support for our work here. We're really amazed by all of the amount of support coming from around the world, but we can do more.
The aid agencies have had time now to refine their logistics and get those delivery mechanisms working properly to service those communities that need that aid. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Beira, Mozambique.
Well, Zimbabwe too has been reeling from the aftermath of the tropical storm. Government and aid agencies are struggling to help the displaced, but are scrambling to meet even their basic needs. CGTN's Chao Ngono has more.
The cyclone Idai has left hundreds dead, thousands displaced and many more missing in Zimbabwe. Cherukai stands in what was once fertile land. The 47-year-old watched as a bus carrying 3 people fell down this cliff, killing everyone on board.
When we saw the bus falling over, we didn't understand what was going on. We just stood there watching. It felt like a dream, a nightmare. We couldn't grasp that the bus was actually falling over the cliff.
Local authorities are appealing for more aid to assist the struggling families.
People lost everything. So for us to say we need this or that, I think we will be understating. Whatever anyone can provide, it will be desperately needed.
Cyclone Idai has left at least 259 people dead in Zimbabwe, according to the UN Migration Agency. Relief focus is now shifting to contain inevitable outbreaks of diseases like malaria and cholera. Chamwono, CGTN.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Maltese soldiers seize small tanker hijacked by migrants. IGAD agrees to implement refugees and returnees program.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them.
in the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A small tanker that was hijacked by migrants off Libya docked in Malta's port of Valletta on Thursday after Maltese special forces took control of the vessel. Cargo ship El Hiblu 1 had been picked up 108 migrants stranded at sea, some of whom then hijacked the vessel when it became clear that it planned to take them back to Libya. Maltese police arrested 4 men and the remainder of the migrants disembarked and boarded onto buses. Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini welcomed Malta's intervention. A South Sudanese lawmaker and 2 security personnel have been killed following an attack in the northeastern state of Latjo. The White Army militia is believed to have carried out the attack, which also left 2 others wounded. The country has been grappling with civil war since 2013, despite President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar signing an accord last September. The prolonged civil war has left 400,000 people dead, has crippled oil production and forced millions to flee.
South Sudanese lawmaker Simon Deng Bol Ajak was on a campaign to promote peace when he was shot and killed by unknown gunmen in the country's Upper Nile region. He was returning from a visit to his home region to try and rally support for the peace deal signed last year between President Salva Kiir and opposition groups. The United Nations says it's concerned about insecurity in parts of the country.
On the security arrangements, yes, again, there's a lag, and we're not seeing the forces coming together. My own feeling and our belief is that we would like to see the strategy or the plan.
The lawmakers' killing comes just a month ahead of the expected formation of a unity government. The parties to the peace deal say they are hopeful that lasting peace will return to the country despite the current violence.
People of South Sudan are committed. Among the people of South Sudan, they have political will. The leaders will develop political will. Because if the people say that they want peace, who are we as the leaders not to accept?
The East African Regional Body, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, or IGAD, says the final decision on whether a unity government will be formed in May or postponed will be made by the parties to the agreement. For now, South Sudan's government says it's investigating what led to the killing and would find those responsible for the crime. Patrick Koyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Earlier, we spoke to Michael Arunga. He is an emergency communications specialist at MA Advance Limited, which deals with advocacy, training and research organizations across Africa. We began by asking him about the successes and the failures of the peace deal in South Sudan.
Yes, and it's going to heighten tension. It's going to, the progress made in terms of trying to bring the warring factions together. We have had peace agreements signed and violated almost immediately, and we were at a point in time where we were hoping that you know, the warring factions would come together and then progression would be achieved. But then with this kind of occurrences, then that heightens tension, it creates confusion among the different warring factions and opens up aspects of tension. It's important, I think, that the leaders take cognizance of the fact of the people on the ground, the communities that are affected, the women, the children, the kind of extremity in terms of, you know, the effects of the conflict. I think if they took that into cognizance, that becomes, I think, a factor that will shift in terms of, the peace process. They'll be able to take it a bit more seriously because the leaders sometimes have not really put themselves in the perspective of the people within the communities, and that brings into doubt their commitment to this process.
Ministers from the Intergovernmental Authority on Development meeting in Kampala have agreed to implement programs that will facilitate self-reliance of refugees and returnees. The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, says around 3.8 million refugees live within the IGAD states and mainly depend on food handouts. IGAD countries include Djibouti, Ethiopia, Uganda, South Sudan, Kenya, Eritrea and Sudan. CGTN's Isabel Nakiria has more on that from Kampala.
Regional ministers from IGAD say the solution to dealing with displacement is supporting self-sustaining interventions. Delegates gathered in Kampala say this prevents dependence on humanitarian aid.
Supporting transition to self-reliance during displacement can also contribute to positive effects for communities of origin when refugees or IDPs eventually return home.
States like Uganda with big influxes of refugees have skills training programs where they learn carpentry, embroidery and modern farming methods. Refugees are also allowed to work and access healthcare and education in the same way that Ugandan citizens do. Participants are urging refugee hosting states to replicate such interventions.
Skills development, turning into jobs are essential because they provide economic opportunities not only for the refugees but also for the host countries.
But the meeting is also calling for the voluntary repatriation of refugees once CAM returns to their countries of origin. The UNHCR says countries must commit to the safety of returnees, including rebuilding their lives once they choose to go back. Delegates here are emphasizing the need to scale up ways of improving the livelihoods of refugees by ensuring their right to work so that they can become self-reliant. In this way, states can reduce financial burden from aid dependency. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
An Egyptian woman has become the youngest in the African Union's history to be appointed as AU Legal Counsel and Director of Legal Affairs. Namira Negum is working with numerous African countries and international organizations to train African lawyers on international standards of arbitration. Our correspondent Adel El Mahrouki sat down with her.
You can see always the legal counsel sitting on the podium next to the chair, because the job of the legal counsel is to advise also the chair and member states in their conduct on the rules of procedure of the House, at the same time any legal issues that they deem necessary to clarify. As for the job of a director of the legal affairs, that's basically to run the office of the legal affairs for the organization, which is entrusted to provide legal advice. We are basically the lawyers of the organization, internally and externally.
I know that you're the first woman to take this position. Does it, in any sense, make you feel a bit pressured to be the first there to prove yourself, especially that in Africa, up till today, women are still struggling for gender equality?
Okay, first, I'm the first woman, I'm the first Egyptian, I'm the first North African, and I'm the youngest in age to take that position. I realized how important and an inspiration it became to the young females around in the continent to see a serious female trying to reach to a certain level, and it gives them hope. It gives me pleasure and pride to be an inspiration to a lot of females around the continent, to know that they see some hope in me, that I managed on my own to get to such a high position.
So in general, one of the main purposes that the African Union is trying to work on is the concept of arbitration. So what is it exactly that you aim to achieve?
Unfortunately, until now, what we figure out that many of the cases, even if it is between two African states on a dispute in relation to trade, for example, it might go to the chambers in Paris or New York or anywhere else. What we are trying to do now is to make sure that these cases remain in Africa. We have arbitration centers that they can handle that. We have calibers that can also do it very well.
Tourists in South Africa can now visit a new must-see attraction at the Agulhas National Park near Cape Town. A 20-metre long steel structure of the map of Africa marks the spot at the southernmost part of the African coast where the Indian and the Atlantic Oceans converge. Rennie Delcam has more.
The map of Africa at Cape Agulhas, the southernmost tip of Africa, pays homage to the mighty African continent and celebrates the symbolism of standing at the tip of Africa.
There's a national park here which is very significant, which is a visitor experience on its own. And I think this map of Africa, which is rather a remarkable iconic monument, is just giving it that extra touch. It makes you really feel you're at the tip of the African continent.
In our tourism growth plan, we have identified Agulhas as one of those parks we want to focus on. We will be constructing soon a restaurant as an added product for this area on top of this. Therefore, I want people to watch the space.
South African tourism and sandparks are confident that this map of Africa will enhance visitors' experience of this geographical landmark.
The Africa is hand-carved and sculpted out of concrete with metal pigmentation on the top to give it the surface color and so on. And the idea is that people can just walk around on the structures, stand on it, walk on the Africa, try and identify places that they might come from or want to go to or have been.
Between 40 to 50,000 tourists visit the Agulhas National Park every year.
And it's hoped the Map of Africa monument will help grow the numbers, not only attracting more tourists here, but also creating more jobs to help boost the local economy.
I've been coming to this southernmost point for many years, and this is a lovely, lovely addition. It's so beautiful.
Honestly, what I see here is something fantastic.
Rennie Delcam, CGTN, Agulhas National Park, South Africa.
The UK Parliament says a new debate over a Brexit motion will be held on Friday, but it's not yet clear if this would result in a formal third vote on the government's divorce deal. Last week, the Speaker of the House, John Bercow, said another vote could only be held on a deal if it were significantly changed from the one lawmakers had already rejected. While the European Union has agreed to delay Brexit until May the 22nd if a deal is approved this week. UK Prime Minister Theresa May has offered to resign in return for Conservative lawmakers' support of her deal. Her spokesperson says May continues to believe her agreement is the best one available.
The only way we ensure we leave in good time on May the 22nd is by approving the withdrawal agreement by 11 p.m. on the 29th of March, which is tomorrow. It is crucial that we make every effort to give effect to that and to allow the House to debate this important issue. We do not want to be in the situation of asking for another extension and, of course, for the requirement to undertake European Parliament elections.
A recap of our top stories now. At least 18 people have been killed and several others injured after a car bomb exploded on a busy street in Somalia's capital. The explosion took place in an area with many businesses and travellers. No one has immediately claimed responsibility for the bombing. However, Mogadishu is regularly targeted by Al-Qaeda affiliates, Al-Shabaab. They've been fighting for over a decade to topple the government. Residents in Mogadishu have expressed shock at the aftermath of the bombing. Mozambique aid organizations are looking to prevent the spread of waterborne diseases. The World Health Organization announced that 900,000 doses of oral cholera vaccines will be sent there. This comes after 5 cases of cholera were confirmed. A small tanker that was hijacked by migrants off Libya docked in Malta's port of Valletta on Thursday after Maltese special forces took control of the vessel. Cargo ship Eli Hiblu 1 had picked up 108 migrants stranded at sea, some of whom then hijacked the vessel when it became clear that it planned to take them back to Libya. Maltese police arrested 4 men and the remainder of the migrants disembarked and boarded onto buses. Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini welcomed Malta's intervention. A South Sudanese lawmaker and 2 security personnel have been killed following an attack in the northeastern state of Lazio. The White Army militia is believed to have carried out the attack, which also left 2 others wounded. The country has been grappling with civil war since 2013, despite President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar signing an accord last September. The prolonged civil war has left 400,000 people dead, has crippled oil production and has forced millions to flee. And those are the top stories that we are covering for you. Let's now go over to Ucha for all the latest business news. Over to you.
Thank you, Karen. And coming up on Africa Live Biz, progress made as China and the US begin a new round of talks. And a look at South Africa's Democratic Alliance proposals to keep the country's lights on.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor, to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
Now, starting off with some international news, China and the United States are about to start a new round of trade talks in Beijing. The Chinese Commerce Ministry says some progress has been made and the 2 sides are committed to negotiations.
The 2 sides have made some progress, but there remains much work to do. The U.S. delegation arrived in Beijing late this afternoon. The 2 sides will have a working dinner tonight and will hold consultations all day tomorrow. Next week, Vice Premier Liu He will visit Washington and hold the 9th round of China-U.S. trade talks. At present, the 2 sides are fully engaged in negotiations and work towards the implementation of the consensus between the 2 heads of state.
And on other issues, the spokesman also expressed concern about Japanese restrictions on telecommunication equipment makers such as Huawei and ZTE. He said this will hurt mutual trust between the 2 countries. He also said the Ministry of Commerce is working to expand market access for foreign firms in China. And Chinese tech giant Huawei has signaled its intentions to drive advanced technology deeper into the East African market. Now, the company is partnering with Redington, the leading distributor of technology in Africa and the Middle East. Here's CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa reporting on their strategy.
Hundreds assembled at a hotel in Nairobi for the annual Huawei Partner Summit. These distributor partners are part of Chinese technology firm Huawei's efforts to avail its products to a wide market, which includes consumers, retailers, and small and medium enterprises. In 2018, Huawei Enterprise signed a distribution agreement with Reddington in Kenya. With over 3,000 distributors spread across Africa, Reddington is working to spread Huawei's advanced information technology products across the region. This is geared towards accelerating ICT development in East Africa.
During this cooperation, I think our local partner helped us to better understand what's the real requirements from the end users. And also, we continually to transfer the technology to the Kenya partners. So we invite a lot of partners, we join together to exchange the idea, and also we share what's the challenge from each other.
Through the forum, the partners are seeking to amplify their intention to drive the rise of advanced technology in the region. This summit comes at a time when companies across the globe are beginning to feel the effects of what is widely regarded as the fourth industrial revolution, with companies looking to ICT for solutions to everyday problems. In Kenya, the government has undertaken an ambitious development agenda, prioritizing affordable healthcare, housing, food security and manufacturing. Partners are keen to identify advanced ICT solutions to support this agenda.
We will see more inroads into private sector in technology in places like banks, telcos, government sector and other large corporates. And we will see them in other areas as well. I see looking, for example, we do healthcare, so we see IoT being a new play, as well as telemedicine. Huawei has a number of large solutions, for example, smart cities, and we will see ourselves working with them to develop and partner in developing and implementing these large projects.
Many of you know that we are the leading
Huawei also plans to open more data centers in Kenya as part of a broader expansion of its cloud services on the continent. Bulletin, CGTN in Nairobi.
Meanwhile, South Africa's biggest opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, has called on the ANC-run government to take urgent action to alleviate the national energy crisis in the Western Cape and other provinces. Now, DA leaders have challenged President Cyril Ramaphosa to allocate the Western Cape government a license to import liquid natural gas, which of course is cleaner and cheaper, and which certainly will help prevent a continued blackout.
The Democratic Alliance notes that the nationwide power outages or load shedding by South Africa's embattled power utility Eskom has had a devastating effect on South Africans. But they have a solution to help keep the lights on in the Western Cape.
When this gas power station is running on diesel at full speed when we're in load shedding, this burns 6.3 million rands worth of diesel every hour. That's 50 homes for poor people every hour that gets burnt when this is running on diesel.
What is happening now, without any further damage, is creating a significant damage to our economy. South Africans are losing work. 10 million people are already unemployed. And by all accounts, as an outcome of load shedding, more people will lose their work.
The DA says it could help stabilize South Africa's national power grid if government allowed provinces such as the Western Cape province to get licenses so that they can procure energy from other independent power producers instead of just Eskom. And if some power stations, such as this one, ran on natural gas instead of diesel. The Democratic Alliance has failed in its bid to get Parliament to urgently address the national power crisis and is taking the matter to court. The party insists that its outrage over the national power outages has nothing to do with the struggle for political power in the build-up to South Africa's election in 6 weeks' time.
Why do we have to go to court to force you to do what is obvious? Let us make the decisions that are not narrow political, but of national interest. And that's why my call today is that give the license to the Western Cape, to the city of Cape Town, so that they can convert this into gas and we can ensure that the lights do stay on.
We need that gas allocation for the Western Cape so that we can start the work. We need it now. We need to start that work now because it takes months. And our country is going to be in this disastrous space of having not enough energy for our economy, not enough energy for jobs or households. So we need to start now. Let's not wait, let's start now.
South Africa gets its power from state-owned Eskom that relies on coal and hydro to generate electricity. The DA proposal, if adopted, will introduce more diversified power generators to the grid. Renée Delcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up on Global Business Africa, South Africa's Reserve Bank retains its repo rate at 6.75% following its Monetary Policy Committee meeting. We'll certainly have the details on that decision at the top of the hour. For now, back to you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Ucha. We are going to a short break. Don't go away, lots more to come, including hairstyling and braiding turns into an art in South Africa.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Johannesburg-based visual artist Lebohang Matang has turned hairstyling and braiding into art. Matang says her work seeks to explore notions around black hair identity as well as other strands. Matang is currently on a residency program with the Project Space. That's a Johannesburg-based cultural platform that aims to empower young African female artists. CGTN's Yolisa Njumela has the story.
Lebohang Mutawung is a 26-year-old hairstylist and artist who has combined her two passions to create portraits that embrace black women's hair. Hairstyling or hair braiding is an art form on its own. Hairstylists use different techniques and different materials to make their art. They constantly have to evolve in order to keep their craft relevant. Mutawung grew up drawing and experimenting with her grandmother's hair. Her interest of braiding grew stronger and she used her skill to support her financial needs.
I've always seen it as an art form. I know I was doing it for money, but it's something I've always done also for creativity. I just felt I loved like the patterns and the textures and stuff. So I sort of like became obsessed with hair, I think, because even when I look at a person, the first thing I would look at is the hairstyle and stuff like that.
So, Mutawung uses her skills as an artist and hairstylist to weave the most extraordinary stories about black women. Mutawung's work represents the connection that exists among black women and the relationship they have with their hair. She tells us that she's mostly influenced by the conversations she used to have with some of the people whose hair she used to plait. This as illustrated in this particular piece.
I was thinking of the bond and the connection that comes with the process of hairstyling. That's why I felt the need to have different faces, different heads that all in all make up one artwork. Because it's like a sisterhood type of thing. Connection of braids from one head to another head, it sort of like represents the connection of thoughts.
Hair is not her only medium. She uses a wide range of mediums from etching to paper making and drawings with hair on paper.
I'm also trying to show the significance of the actual material, which is hair. I've been doing like pencil drawings and charcoal drawings before, but I feel like with this ones where I'm using the actual material, I think it's very important for you to associate the material that you're using with the subject matter. And I feel like with the use of synthetic hair and natural hair, it sends what I'm trying to say. Like it's associated with the subject matter. I think it helps more.
Mutaung has another peculiar experience with hair. In high school, she was restricted from wearing her hair freely. Hence, she emphasizes that her work is about self-definition and self-expression.
I never appreciated that. I never understood why are we not allowed to express ourselves. So that's why in my work, I usually go for like extraordinary hairstyles. I tend to exaggerate. Like even if you see like this, I feel like as a person, you need to be, you have the right to express yourself the way you want to.
Mutaung has exhibited her work in many parts of the country and in other countries. She now itches to have a solo exhibition, and she's currently working on 3 art pieces for the New York Art Fair coming up in May. Yudisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
We've got all the sports news coming up for you after the break, including South Africa's Proteas looking forward to Cricket World Cup without the tag of favourites.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The 2019